It's Little Bird and Jesus.
Bible stories for bedtime.
And car time. And playtime.
And anytime you want to hear how much Jesus loves you in all this world.
Even little birds.
Hi, I'm Pastor Sarah at St. Paul Lutheran Church in Davenport, Iowa. Welcome to this podcast where we tell stories told just for kids and kids at heart. We're here together to learn about Jesus and his friend Little Bird as they have all kinds of adventures and meet all kinds of amazing people. Well, podcast friends, it's so good to be with you. Our story today continues just after Jesus was born and after those 3 wise men, along with their camel friends, came to visit him. Do you remember those wise men and that mean King Herod who felt threatened by Jesus? Well, that king is going to be a part of today's story. So get that imagination ready for episode 12 of season 3, Little Bird and Jesus Escape to Egypt. When Jesus was still a very little baby, soon after the 3 wise men left with their camels, Mary, Joseph, and baby Jesus were all asleep in the stable. Little Bird had nestled herself into some hay near Jesus, but she couldn't sleep. It was just too noisy in that stable. The cows were making noises in their sleep. The doves were making noises too. The little mice were awake and scurrying around. And little baby Jesus had the cutest but loudest of baby snores. As Little Bird listened to the quiet noises of the stable, she heard Joseph mumble in his sleep. He and Mary were asleep under a blanket on a pile of hay right next to the manger where Jesus slept. Joseph was very clearly having a dream. He mumbled a bit more until he finally said, Yes, we'll go right away. And then Joseph sat up straight, his eyes wide and looking scared. Mary sat up looking worried. Joseph, what's gotten into you? She said. We're safe and we're cozy here. It's not fancy, but I like it. But Joseph was already standing up, putting on his outer robes, lacing up his sandals. He looked at Mary. I had a dream, Mary. An angel, Gabriel, I think, told me to wake up and take you and the baby and go to Egypt. Herod is about to search for the child and wants to kill him. Mary nodded. Then let's go. God continues to take care of us, to warn us when there is danger. And so they began to pack up their things, loading their few possessions into bags. Mary saw Little Bird and said to her, Little Bird, we need to take a long trip far from here to a strange place, to a place where Jesus will be safe. I understand if you want to stay here, but you are welcome to come with us if you want. Dear little sparrow, you are part of our family, and your company would bless us. Little Bird was scared. She heard a lot about Herod the king. He was mean and hurt all kinds of people. King Herod did not like the idea that everybody was giving this little baby so much attention. He was jealous of the baby Jesus, who was the Savior of the world, God's only beloved Son. Herod didn't want that little baby to grow up to be more important than he was. Everyone in the whole region, even the animals, were scared of Herod and his soldiers. Little Bird was too, and so were Mary and Joseph. They knew he would look in every house and every stable until he found baby Jesus. And even though Little Bird was scared, she wanted to stay with her friends. They were family to her. She'd travel with them. Maybe she could help keep baby Jesus safe, even though she was little. She would do what she could for him and for Mary and Joseph. And so, not too many minutes later, Mary held Jesus close to her chest and wrapped a strong cloth around them to bind him up like a baby kangaroo attached to her. And she climbed onto the strong back of their donkey. "Shh," Mary said. In the quiet of the night, while the little town of Bethlehem lay still and quiet, the Holy Family left everyone that was familiar to them, hoping that there would be people along the way who would care for them. They traveled through the rest of the night and straight through the next day and the next night, wanting to get as far away from that mean King Herod as they could. They stopped only long enough to eat the meager food they packed and to feed baby Jesus. But after 2 days, they were exhausted and hungry. They had run out of food. Every hour they grew more and more tired. Mary said to Little Bird, who was resting, sitting between the donkey's soft ears, "Little Bird, we're so tired. Donkey is tired. I am tired. You are tired. Joseph is tired. We have to stop. Can you fly ahead and see if there is some place where we can stop?" Little Bird mustered her strength and flew ahead. Just around the bend was a house, and she could smell the scent of warm bread. She peeked into the window and saw that it was the home of a baker, a man who was kneading a great big pile of dough. The man was singing psalms, prayers to God. "The Lord is my light and my salvation." Little Bird could just tell that this man was someone they could trust. And plus, that bread! There was so much bread! He had plenty to share. So she flew back to Mary, tweeting and gesturing for them to follow her. When they got to the house, they knocked on the door.
Clunk, clunk, clunk.
They heard a voice coming from inside. Come in, come in. My hands are covered with bread dough, and I can't open the door for you, but come in." Little Bird perched on the windowsill, grateful to finally get a chance to rest, and watched as Mary and Joseph stepped inside. Joseph said, "Hello. I'm traveling with my wife and my baby and donkey. We are cold and tired and hungry. Would you mind if I bring my family in from the cold? What about the donkey too? We all need a warm place to stay, please." The baker smiled a big smile and reached out his dough-covered hands. He said, "Absolutely. Come on in. My house is your house. There's a small barn out back for your donkey. Please get him settled and come back here to warm yourself by the fire." While Joseph took care of Donkey, Mary and Jesus sat down by the fire. Mary was so tired and so grateful to finally get a chance to rest, and soon Joseph joined her. Little Bird was almost asleep herself on the windowsill when a sound woke her up. Her little sparrow ears were very good at hearing, and she could just make out the sound of horse hooves and the clang of metal.
Cling, cling.
She flew up, and it was just as she feared. Out in the distance, she saw a pair of soldiers riding fast on their horses, heading right toward them. She flew inside the window, shocking the baker, who wasn't used to seeing birds inside. Little Bird went up to Joseph, tweeting as loud as she could, "Soldiers! Soldiers are about to come for you!" But he didn't understand. Mary said, "Joseph, she's trying to warn us about something. Maybe there are soldiers coming for Jesus." The baker looked terrified. Joseph looked around, trying to figure out if they could escape. Mary thought fast. She rushed the baby over to the baker, who stood still in front of his table full of bread dough. She said to him, "Here, you must hide him. Please hide him." Just then, the soldiers banged on the door.
Open up in the name of the King!
The baker received Jesus, holding him gently. He was quiet, still sleeping, all bundled up in his blanket, unaware of the chaos and the danger that surrounded him. Quickly, the baker took a big pile of bread dough that he had been kneading and began to wrap the dough all around Jesus. It was as if the baby were some kind of filling inside a pastry. The soldiers banged even harder.
Bang, bang, bang! Open up!
The baker said impatiently. I'm coming. You caught me right in the middle of baking. The baker wrapped the dough and wrapped the dough and wrapped the dough all around baby Jesus. And then he set him quietly on the table and went back to kneading some bread dough right next to baby Jesus. Then the baker nodded to Joseph, who went to open the door. The soldiers stepped inside the room. Little Bird was scared and hid in the corner. The soldier looked around suspiciously. He said, We've been looking for little children, babies especially. Is there a child in this house? Then he looked at Mary. You look like a mother. Do you have a baby? We have orders from King Herod to round up all the baby boys. But Mary said nothing. Then the soldiers began to look everywhere in that house for a baby. They looked under the furniture and in the cupboards. They looked in blankets and in their bags and bundles. They found Little Bird where she was hiding, and she flew up in the air as they got close. They looked everywhere, high and low, every nook, every cranny, every spot. They stared down the baker, who just kept on kneading his small loaf of bread. They stared down Mary and Joseph, who stayed silent and scared. But they did not find a baby. Eventually, they gave up. They looked at them all and said, Well, if you meet anyone who has a baby boy, you better tell us. King Herod wants him. They walked out and slammed the door behind them. The baker kept kneading the dough, and Mary and Joseph stood still, unable to move. Little Bird watched as the soldiers rode away off to search the next house, and she tweeted out, It's safe. They're gone. And then the baker, gently, quietly, unwrapped the dough from around Jesus, and as he lifted the baby from his doughy manger, he unwrapped him carefully and held him close before he handed him back to Mary, who wept, grateful, holding her beloved baby close to her heart. Mary and Joseph stayed with that baker for a few days, and they kept on traveling to Egypt, continuing to meet people who cared for them, who fed them and offered them warm and safe places to stay. The Holy Family and their little sparrow friend stayed in Egypt for a few years until King Herod died, and Joseph had another dream, telling them it was safe to go home to their family and friends in Nazareth. But according to this medieval legend about the baker and the baby and the dough, something pretty amazing happened with that baker and his bread. The story goes that on that day, after baby Jesus got wrapped up in that floury, yummy pastry, a strange and wonderful thing happened to the dough. When the baker began to shape the dough into loaves, the bread rose higher and higher and higher. And the thing was, no matter how many loaves he would put into the oven to bake, there was always more dough left over. There was never a shortage of this bread. The man in the house began to give the bread away. The baker shared and shared and shared. Loaf by loaf, he gave it away. It was one way he could remind everyone that the love of Jesus is without end. This little baby boy wrapped up in dough became the joy of the world. As hard as King Herod tried, he could not stop Jesus' love from growing and growing. He could not stop people like the baker from being kind and welcoming of strangers. He could not stop birds like Little Bird from singing, which Little Bird does every day, in gratitude for that baby Jesus, his family, and God's powerful love, stronger than anything, which never stops. Thank you so much for listening to today's story. Maybe today you can act this story out, or make some bread and play with the dough, making it rise and rise. And remember that Jesus' love is stronger than anything else in the whole world, stronger than any king or any ruler or any bully or mean person or bad situation. You know, there are still a lot of people around the world who are like Mary and Joseph and baby Jesus, who have to leave their homes and families because they aren't safe there anymore. They are called refugees, and because of war or cruel rulers like Herod, they have to leave home to be safe. One of the things that we get to do as followers of Jesus is be like that baker and open our hearts and homes to refugees and to others who are in need of extra care and support and friendship. Maybe you can ask your grown-ups about ways you can do something special for refugees who have come to your communities, sharing bread and making new friends. It's one of the ways that we can be a part of that powerful love of Jesus, which grows and grows and grows all the time. Still, even now. Thanks for listening to this episode of Little Bird and Jesus, and I hope you have a wonderful day.
Now flap your little wings.
Sing a little song.
And remember that to Jesus,
You will always belong.
Thanks for listening to Little Bird and Jesus, a podcast of St. Paul Lutheran Church in Davenport, Iowa. For more information on St. Paul, visit us at stpaulqc.org. Come visit us again next week as Little Bird continues her journey.